I'm actually a project manager for IDRC, and personally, at a personal level, I'm an architect actually by formation, and then I turned into coding because I felt like I could bridge this gap there is between construction, building, sustainability, and technology. And so what we actually do is by changing how the building works and the building systems, we make them more sustainable. So this requires some knowledge of buildings and of course some knowledge of coding. And I guess my main message here is for people here who come from a different background, also to give a message of courage to engage in coding, and that coding can always enrich whatever you're doing and whatever backgrounds you have. There are like some things that are common here. For instance, the short cycles Frederick was talking about. So we actually had this thing where we had called a 2-week sprint, where every 2 weeks we need to have a task done and then we review how we have done. And actually setting these deadlines instead of waiting for some customer deadline, this was really life-changing for the way we worked and how fast we worked. And about tools, for instance, Asana was a very good tool for us, even when working with people that, they are actually physically not here in the distance. For instance, we have another person in Barcelona that collaborates with us, and the fact that we can assign him tasks and we can see when he finishes his tasks and he can post pictures of the state of things, all of this will actually improved a lot the speed at which things were and also the quality of the work we've done.
What's really needed for the project, what's like your expectation of the outcome, the result, and then choose the relevant. And especially like what fits for you to deliver that makes more sense.
Yeah, I think because whenever we're designing a product, we can touch some dangerous areas because we can sort of become in love with our own ideas or too much in love on what we think somebody would want, and that actually sometimes does not reflect reality. So it's very important if you're designing for a certain type of user also to talk to the user and understand what the people really want and what really makes their life easier instead of being in your own dream. You kind of need to clear your mind out of what you think is cool or it's going to work and really approach people and talk to them. That's in the architecture world, that's a very sensitive issue. So just to give some background of what I was doing before, I was a parametric designer. So it means my previous job at RFR, the architect comes with us with an idea, with a concept, a statistical concept of what they want for their building. And we were supposed to make a parametric version of it, so we were supposed to code their building. And afterwards, we're supposed to improve it structurally. And what happens is, of course, it's going to have some adjustments. And so this is a job an engineer or a coder could perfectly do, but the reason why you also need an architect is to interpret what's the, let's say, artistic message the architect is trying to convey and not to somehow ruin it in the eyes of the architect. So. And in this regard, it's a very back and forth process and a very sensitive process because the architect puts so much, as you said, you put so much of you on your code, and architect also puts so much their idea there. And it's also a negotiation process where you need to sometimes explain, okay, I know you like this shape like this, but maybe this doesn't work so well, so let's look at alternatives. And it's a matter of being generally sensitive to other people and listening to what people want, I guess.
What you described for the architect is more like the attachment of a product owner or a CEO. This vision for my business, right?
Yeah.
And the temptation to interfere with technology and get into the detail and micromanage the engineer to make sure that their vision doesn't get distorted. It's really stressful for both sides.
I think most of our experiences were with corporate, and it's first of all, but going back to what you said, if you don't have a deadline, it's really easy to get really dispersed in ideas, and then you want to add that and some other things, and you cannot really focus on what's essential for your MVP. And the thing about working with corporate that is kind of ironic is they take such a long time to sign a contract with you, but once they do, they are going to demand results so fast. So it's very hard to find a balance between like if you're already expecting to have a contract with a certain company, and it's very hard to find a balance where you're working towards what they want and still thinking, okay, but if somebody else comes along, will this still work? Are we just burning time and in the end they will not sign this contract and the product will need to change? So I think this is probably for me one of the hardest things to manage, I would say. Almost all of us are using different coding languages and we need to tie all together. And as you, it's cool, but it's painful too. And of course, we could never actually do this if our work dynamic wasn't very good. Because if you actually have good relationships and good dynamics and people have good personalities, even though like you have 1,000 bugs and things are hard and you're staying late, you end up having some fun and you are actually excited to keep collaborating with these people, and you put more effort on it, even if you just want to make the job easier for the next person because it's somebody you care about and you have a good working relation with. So I think building good relationships with the people you work and trying to understand or trying to figure out which is your working dynamic, it's very important. And about having team members that are working remotely, we actually had very interesting experiences too, because we had a freelance web developer that we'd never known in person, and the result was, I would say, catastrophic. And for our next move, we had some, I mentioned him earlier, Yair, IoT engineer, coming for the summer, and we all met here in Shanghai, so he's from Barcelona, right? And he came from the summer in Shanghai, and we worked together, but we also had fun together. We built a personal relationship, and the fact is he's in Barcelona right now, and he's still collaborating very actively with us, and is being extremely helpful, and we keep this also personal relationship, and it's like the work dynamic is somehow still there even though he is not here physically. So there is I would guess one of the main things here is really to develop a dynamic with somebody, something you already know how the other person works, what the other person is expecting to receive, and keep this even when people are away or when they are in your presence. And yeah, I think this is my advice.
That's very interesting to me because initially when we were drafting this topic, I think we were talking more about the coding thing, but actually we are talking more beyond the coding.
Yes, the human side of it.
Help us deliver a better product. It's not just like the tools and other things, but the team, the dynamic, and the different ways that they collaborate and really know the people who is coding. That can actually help to deliver more and help to make things happen quicker and more efficiently.
Yes, and in our case we have people from very, very different backgrounds, because we, for instance, Pedro, who is right here, is actually a graphic designer and a web developer, and I'm an architect, and we have engineers, and it's we all think very differently, as you can imagine, because of our backgrounds. And actually it's really helpful when we sit down together and we try to understand how we frame things in our minds, and the things that actually concern us when coding. They are so different, and it's a very, let's say, rich learning process when we sit down together and look at the process that each one of us has. Yeah, but also to add up to what you said about people who come to you with a short budget, this is also true that they come to you with a short budget and sometimes they have unrealistic expectation, and that also reflects on the level of preparedness they have to receive the product you're going to give to them and the way they are going to handle things. And sometimes you end up handling things that were obviously on their side too, and they are also very unprepared. So this is, I agree, this is like a huge risk to take. You need to be really careful and really think through when you receive this kind of proposal.
Any other challenges?
Oh, we had also a similar experience to yours. So we had the steel factory that wanted us to develop a 3D model where you could click on things and see information about the steel production and the parts of the factory, and You could navigate it. And so what they actually wanted to do was some sort of inauguration, and they wanted it to look very technological and to look like they're very advanced. And so it also had like a lot of aesthetic work to make it look like kind of futuristic and all this. And then in the end, when we are about to deliver it, we find out that they have this computer and this screen, and it's a super old version of Windows. I don't even know what it was. And it absolutely could not run on that version of Windows. And then when we tried to convince them to upgrade their computers, there was so much bureaucracy that they didn't want to go through. It was a total disaster. We had to try to adapt things to this super old computer. It was
XP
crazy.
Service Pack 3.
Yeah, but how can you? But how can you want to give like a super technological look to your factory or whatever to your inauguration? You don't even upgrade your computer, you know.
When their monitors are still this big. You know?
I didn't expect.
Yeah, we didn't either. No, nobody could have prepared for that, I don't think.
Yeah.